From the earliest human settlements, people began to cover their bodies, not just for protection, but to express identity, belonging, and status. A simple piece of fabric soon became a silent language, a way for societies to define morality, class, and belief. In ancient Mesopotamia, laws even regulated who could and could not wear veils. Noble and married women were required to cover their heads. Enslaved women and prostitutes were forbidden. The act of covering was a privilege, a visible sign of dignity. Stone reliefs from that time show women with fine linen wrapped around their heads, the folds drawn neatly over their shoulders. Simple fabric became a code of respect. In ancient Egypt, covering was tied to sacred symbolism. Priestesses and queens wore translucent linen veils embroidered with gold threads, while common women left their heads uncovered. The veil here wasn't about hiding, but about closeness to the divine. It shimmered under the sun of Ra, a light fabric between human and God. Meanwhile, in Persia, women wore layered shawls of wool and silk. Deep colors like red, purple, and blue suggested both modesty and prestige. Here, the draped head became a mark of virtue and authority. In Greece and Rome, covering was a blend of modesty and aesthetics. Women would draw the edge of their long garments over their heads when they stepped into the street. The movement was graceful, not defensive. White and cream fabrics framed calm faces, and sculptures captured this moment of restraint as a part of beauty. In Rome, during religious ceremonies, noble women lifted the edge of their palla over their heads. Vestal virgins covered themselves with pure white cloth, a sign of their spiritual purity. Among ancient Hebrews, head covering was written into social ethics. Women covered their hair in public as a sign of fidelity and respect. Simple linen scarves tied at the nape of the neck were a meaningful gesture. As Christianity spread across the Mediterranean, the meaning of the veil deepened. In early churches, women covered their heads in worship, as instructed by St. Paul. The Virgin Mary was almost always shown with a veil, often blue for wisdom or red for divine love. Modesty became visible faith. In Byzantium, noble women continued to cover their hair with dark silk or wool, and the headscarf blended social rules with aesthetic choice. With the rise of Islam in the 7th century, veiling gained new symbolic meaning, intertwining with ideas of respect, privacy, and belonging. In Mecca and Medina, women wore long robes and shawls covering their hair and shoulders. The form changed with geography, heavier in Persia, lighter in Andalusia, translucent in Egypt. During the Abbasid Golden Age, urban women dressed with refined taste. Elite families used silk, while others used cotton. In Central Asia, Turkic and Persian traditions blended. Veils of soft color fastened with gold pins, framed faces already shaped by nomadic winds. The Seljuks introduced new elegance with long flowing scarves of white and pale blue glimmering under sunlight. This idea of modest beauty extended westward into Anatolia, where the early Ottomans combined it with Byzantine influences. Urban women wore a loose outer cloak called the firache, and the headscarf completed the image. By the 16th century, fabrics grew richer. Cuirasses of velvet and brocade gleamed in jeweled tones. A new form appeared, the yezmak, a veil made of two parts, one covering the head and another of fine tulle falling across the lower face. In the courtyards of Topkapi Palace, women walked slowly, their veils translucent in the light of fountains. The gesture was not secrecy, but ceremony. Through the following centuries, trade filled Istanbul with French lace, Persian silks, and Indian textiles, and the headscarf became brighter. While these changes unfolded in the East, the Christian West had its own long history of covering. The Middle Ages made the veil almost universal across Europe. The wimple, a cloth wrapping the head and neck, became a symbol of modesty for married women and nuns. White linen framed the face like a halo. Renaissance portraits by artists like Botticelli preserved this gesture, turning humility into elegance. Later, in Spain, the lace mantilla appeared both romantic and devout, a delicate veil pinned with a comb. By the 17th and 18th centuries, veils became symbols of class. Aristocrats displayed luxury in silk and lace, peasants in wool. The French court even transformed modesty into high style, as veils shortened into decorative headpieces. The French Revolution swept away those layers of silk and class, but by the mid-19th century, the moral order of Victorian Britain brought them back in black. The mourning veil turned sorrow into a public ritual. Queen Victoria wore hers for 40 years, turning personal grief into a national costume. But industrial life redefined everything. Working women used scarves against dust and smoke, while city women replaced them with hats. The hat was a new kind of veil, one that covered but also announced modernity. At the turn of the 20th century, women in Europe and the Middle East were balancing faith, fashion, and function. Each scarf, hat, or turban carried centuries of history folded within its fabric. The early 20th century changed the world with a speed never seen before. Clothing became an argument, a declaration of values. In the cities of the late Ottoman Empire, long cuirasses slowly disappeared, replaced by coats and mantles inspired by European fashion. Headscarves became smaller and more colorful. In Istanbul, women walked the same streets wearing both veils and hats, a living dialogue between old customs and new ideas. In Europe, a parallel story unfolded. After the trauma of the First World War, women entered the workforce in great numbers. Short hair and cloche hats of the 1920s framed a new identity of independence, but the act of covering the head remained. The gesture of shaping and framing the face survived, even as the meaning evolved. The 1950s brought back a certain kind of elegance through fashion magazines and film stars. Silk scarves reappeared, but this time not as religious signs, but as icons of sophistication. Figures like Audrey Hepburn and Grace Kelly tied colorful scarves under their chins, turning them into symbols of grace and speed, of cars, wind, and travel. The same square of fabric could now mean Parisian glamour or rural tradition, depending on who wore it. Across the Middle East and Asia, the period between the 1950s and 1970s was filled with independence movements. As colonial empires collapsed, new nations looked for a balance between heritage and progress. In Egypt, Iran, and elsewhere, educated women began to reinterpret the veil as part of a modern identity. Some wore a new, tight headscarf style, combining modern tailoring with cultural symbolism. Then, in the 1980s, global media and fashion industries transformed the conversation. Designers discovered that modest clothing could be stylish. Luxury brands released silk scarf collections, and Paris and Milan fashion shows displayed models with covered heads. The veil, which had once signified privacy, now appeared on billboards under electric light, its meanings multiplied. The 21st century opened with an even wider spectrum. In the cities of the Gulf and the streets of Jakarta, in Istanbul and Paris, women covered their heads in hundreds of different ways. From minimalist monochrome turbans to pastel chiffon scarves, from traditional chatters to avant-garde street fashion, the variety became endless. Social media gave visibility to this creativity. Influencers posted tutorials, designers built new markets, and for the first time in history, headscarves appeared openly on international runways. The same fabric that once separated public from private now connected cultures through imagery and style. Yet the veil also remained political. In some countries it was restricted. In others, encouraged. The debate continued about what it represented. But the fabric itself had already transcended those boundaries. Today, the streets of every major city display this beautiful mosaic. In the morning rush of Paris, a woman adjusts a silk turban on the metro. In Istanbul, another ties an ivory scarf before stepping into traffic. In Jakarta, a designer drapes pastel chiffon for a fashion shoot. In New York, a model walks down a runway, her head wrapped in sculptural fabric. The fabrics move alike, though the meanings differ. What began thousands of years ago as protection from wind and sun has turned into an evolving dialogue between visibility and belief, autonomy and tradition, the self and the world. The history of covering the head is a story of how humanity shaped its moral and aesthetic universe through cloth. And perhaps the entire history can be seen in one ordinary moment. A woman stands before a mirror, adjusts a piece of fabric on her head, smooths its edge, takes a quiet breath, and steps outside. The city changes, the era changes, faiths and fashions rise and fall, but that single pause before the mirror remains constant.